haven't done this before, I suggest that you start with this and then venture off into other things, because it's the one that's most trending right now, I would say, and it's the one that really I feel is like that gives you the results you want every single time. Put it to that.
هلا رح يبلش يطلع انه تعملوها بطريقه سريعه ومطلوبه من الزباين فبكون عندكم اسهل.
So I'm going to do a partial for this one. And we're going to use Light Master today. Oh, it's there now. So there's a few things from my hair painting that make all the difference. Thank you. Excuse me. The first for me is the consistency of my lightener. That's going to make or break my balayage.
اهم شيء هي الخلطه تبع البليتش، ما بتكون رخوه كثير وما بتكون تخينه كثير، يعني بدكم انتم تسيطروا على
And I usually measure 1 to 1, 1 part lightener to 1 part developer. What I love about these matrix bowls is they actually have a measuring cup in the bowl, which I love. But I like that perfect consistency. And in all honesty, no matter what lightener you use, 1 to 1 is going to get you almost there. I do it because I know I'm using manufacturer's directions. But then I may add a little powder or a little bit of, I talked about thinking outside the box, a little bit of developer, until I get it to that perfect, creamy consistency that's great for painting. So I'm using 30 volumes. I don't always use 30. Sometimes I'll use 20 volume developer. I even use 10 sometimes. Because remember, we're talking about the golden hour, sun-kissed hair. I rarely use 40 volume. Very, very rare. So I'm using Light Master today. So let me show you. I'm going to walk around. I did just about 1 to 1, and I actually, it's pretty good. So this is Light Master. This is an 8-level lift lightener. Have any of you guys tried High Riser yet, the new lightener? Yeah? What'd you think? Yeah, yeah, it's pretty good, right? So, High Riser is the new 9-level. We talked about dark bases earlier. They just came out with this year in Dubai. I've been using this for about 1.5 years, and it's really changed the game for me. So for those dark bases, I would say that High Riser would be really, really, really great to use. It lifts really quickly, just like Casey said, and it is great for open air. It really is. But today we're going to use Light Master.
هي اخر شيء نزلناها هي الهاي رايزر، حتى اذا عندكم شعر غامق بتفكر اسرع واغلى. بعيدا كيف؟ لا ما بخلص هي تكون كلها ما دام تخلطوها بشكل انه تصير كريمي خلص، بس اكيد بعد ساعه ساعتين كيف
So this is the consistency, you notice? I don't like it dripping off my brush too wet. If I'm doing foils, I think that's fine, but when I'm doing a spray paint, I really like it with this creamy consistency. Not too thick, not too thin. If it's too thick, what's going to happen? It's going to dry out really quickly. And when lightener dries, it stops working. Sometimes with matrix, it's rare, but it can start to thicken a little bit. I always add a little bit more developer because I want to keep it, wet enough that it's going to keep lightening, but not so, not too thick, but also not too thin, because that's when you're going to get bleed marks.
انا ببعث لكم الاكاديمي كالندر، بس تشوفوا في عندنا هايلايت او ترند، تعالوا هون لا تستخدموه.
The other thing with me
تعرف
is,
عليها اكثر
sorry.
تستخدموها. واذا بدكم تجيبوا مودلز احسنين لتعرفوا النتائج على الشعر الطبيعي، مثل ما بتعرفوا هاي مش شعر طبيعي، بس رح تطلع الوان حلوه، بس على الشعر الطبيعي تطلع احلى.
And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, I'll go back and forth so each of you get to see. Okay, so if you don't see on the first page, the next time I'll move this way, and I'll just keep going back and forth so everybody can see. So the first thing is my consistency. The next second is my brush. A clean brush is going to make or break you as well. What I used to do is my brush would get lightener all over it, and then the next thing you know, it's transferring for the hair. You really want to avoid transfer as much as possible. So I always keep one towel, sometimes a little bit damp, is nice, to clean my brush. I think of it like a makeup brush. Think about a makeup artist, right? They're doing makeup and they're constantly cleaning their brush because they're using different colors and different palettes. I look at balayage the exact same way. And I always have a separate brush to keep mixing my liner because that keeps it activated. But obviously this brush is going to get a little bit more messy because I'm going, so I use two separate brushes. And if you'll notice, this is like my pen. So I put my liner just on the tip of this brush and I draw my lines. And I usually take about a ½ inch section. Be gentle on yourself today with these mannequins. It's a mannequin, so it's always a little bit more, it's not the same as human hair, obviously, but I usually, for this is the 2-point zigzag that I'm talking about. And I'll show you some other techniques when we go forward, but this is the one I use the most. So I start off by drawing my 2 lines. Come back in. Here's my pen again. And I make my second line. So here's my V. Now it all depends on how much dimension. Think of it teasy-like. And if you guys tease the hair, the more you tease, the more dimension you have. This is similar in that the lower I go with my V, the more dimension I'm going to have. The higher I paint up the middle, the less dimension that I'm going to have. Does that make sense to everyone? So once I have my lines, I'll come in and I start to paint in the center. So we'll do like a mid. I'll have my dimension a little bit lower. I can come all the way up here if I wanted to, but obviously I prefer dimension. I think it's trending more now anyway, and I like to have that. So I usually come about midway. Once I have it on there, lightly brush, but it's really about being as clean as possible. And then I'll come in, usually with a paddle. You can use a comb, you can use the back of your glove if you want. Everybody has their own. I generally don't use the back of my glove because, again, it's harder for me to keep everything clean. I find that it transfers on the hair. But some people love it, there's no right or wrong. And then I'll come in. What I find with this is this gives me a lot of control. And you want to make sure that you really saturate this hair. Everybody see? It really is quite simple. The more you do it, the easier it gets. I used to use plastic, cotton, all kinds of things to separate. The more I do this, the less I need that. And I encourage you today, since we're doing mannequins, and our mannequins don't have feelings, we don't need to use plastic. If you're new to balayage, like some of you are, when you go back to the salon, think of your plastic as your training wheels. I encourage you to use it when you're doing a real client. Because that way, it just gives you that little bit of insurance that it's not going to transfer until you know you have that nice consistency. Then you don't have to use it as much. I'm going to do one more on this side and then I'm going to turn. So I'm going to come in here, if you notice, I take the triangle. What I love about free painting too, with my brush, is that it gives you a little bit more freedom. It's not so uniform. So I may do a wider V on one, a thinner on the other. I think that natural highlights what I try to create with this technique. I think of children, children were children, we get those beautiful natural sun-kissed highlights, and then as we get older, we lose them. And I try to recreate that with this. And when you look at natural highlights that happen in the sun, you know, like what we talked about, the golden hour, they're never perfect. There's always a little bit, one thicker highlight, one, you know, and that to me is a much more natural sun-kissed look. Oh, thank you. Yes. Definitely easier. So, and this technique compared to foil, the reason it gives a sun-kissed look is when you paint this way, we're not painting, if you put it in foil, we're actually painting the full circumference of the hair follicle. So it's a lot thicker, more pronounced highlight. This, we're only highlighting the outside of the cuticle. That's why it's more of a sun-kissed golden hour look. Whereas in foil, when you're insulating, you're going to be lighting the entire circumference of the hair follicle. Makes sense?
الشعر بثلاث طبقات فالطريقة بس يفتح الطبقة الخارجية فبيعطيكم هيدا الألوان الداكنة. إذا بتعملوا هايلايت عادي بدك تفتحوا في الأخير ما بيعطيكم الألوان الداكنة.
So, I'm going to turn a little bit so that people can see on this other side. Yeah. And again, be a little more easy on yourself with the mannequin. His hair is a little not as good. But if you notice, even with the hair being like this, my consistency, even with me getting the hair on it, which I normally wouldn't on a client, there's really very little transfer on the hair. It's really about the consistency.
الخلطة تبع البليش بتعمل فرق كثير كيف تخلطوها حتى بنحطوا خصلة على خصلة إنه ما البليش ما بيضرب على الخصلة اللي بعدها فما بتصير عندكم هالبقعة.
So now let's talk about the brick clay, and then I'm going to show you how I do my face cream with this. So,
في حدا عنده أي سؤال؟ Anybody has a question?
Does anyone have questions so far?
No.
Good? No? So, for my placement, to make sure that it looks beautiful and natural, when I talk about a zigzag pattern, all that means, it's pretty simple. Wherever my 2 points are in my one section, my two points in the next section are just in between. So in the area where I have my dimension, my point will start for the next one and on the outside, and that's what I mean by zigzag. So your 2 points are just always going to brick lay on top of each other throughout the hair. It's really the simplest placement that's going to give you the best results and have a really even blonde from nape to face frame. Does that make sense to everyone? If you go on top of, if my triangles are on top of each other all throughout, that's, you know, people always say, how does it not look stripy? It's really just doing a brick lay. If you do a brick lay, it's not going to look stripy, it's going to look really beautiful and really natural.
الزجزاج هيك تاخذوا خصلة من هون خصلة من هون بعدين الخصلة الثانية بتصير بالعكس حتى مش كلهم يجوا واحدة فوق الثانية ونبين إنه هايلايت عادي.
So see there, my 2 points coming in, and I'm a little lighter. You notice around the face I decided to come up a little bit higher.
بتجوا الخصلة اللي قريبة عن الوش البي راح يصير على الأكبر مش من
And you could go one way or the other. I could go lower around the face if I want more dimension around the face on this particular model. I thought let's come a little bit higher so it's a little brighter around the face. And that's what I love about this technique. You really have the freedom to be an artist and to do however you think is best. But you see how this lays here? You're kind of almost creating a flower, like a flower petal around the head.
هاي بتعملوها كأنه اذا انتم بتسيطروا على الهايلايت ما بيسيطر عليه. انتم عم ترسموا حسب وش الزبونه، حسب كتابه الشعر، بتعرفوا وين تحطوا.
So creating my two lines, coming into the center, and dropping. Everybody see that? And I would just work my way around the head. So what I want to talk about now, does anybody have any questions about that?
في عندكم اي سؤال بالنسبه للي عمله؟ كله واضح؟
No?
حلو.
Great. The face frame. Do you have a comment?
هلا رح نعمل تحديد
Any. It could be a rat tail, it could be any. Yes, there you go. That's great. Thank you. So when it comes to doing around the face, her hairline's interesting, but I call it lion. The lion. Everybody knows a lion has a beautiful mane, right? Most of them. So for my face framing with balayage, in fact, one of the models we did at the show this week, we did this, it worked beautifully, is how I paint the highlights around the face is similar to what I showed you on Casey in the beginning. What I did to the underneath, I also do that around the face, because that creates a beautiful hue of lightness around the face for a sun-kissed glow.
تذكروا كيف عمل على ستريتي؟ يس من ورا. هلا عم يعملها من قدام، يعني في عملها من لأعطيكم طلة الأسد، كيف الأسد عنده شعرات بيسميها الأسد غضنفر.
To give you a better idea, I'm going to do it on this side, and then I'll show you another technique in the back. So, when I do my face framing, if you notice too, my brush, I did all those sections and it's still clean. If for some reason your brush starts to get messy, I encourage you to just go wash it, clean it, or get a new brush. It's going to honestly, whenever you see spots in balayage, one of the biggest questions I get is, how do you not get transfer? How is it not spotty? It looks like it's going to be messy. How do you do it? I would have to tell you it's consistency of the lightener, but it's more than anything, it's the brush. Anytime I've gotten spots over the years, it's because I didn't clean my brush. It really is, it's gonna be the game changer. So for my face framing, I'll do the same. I'll take my points and I'll paint my legs. I'll show you. So I go a little bit thinner. And I'll start by doing my points in the hair, like so. And I really try to find, on a regular client, everybody has that growth pattern that I'm talking about, and I'll go to all the points, and I'll just do rather than a V, I'll do what I call more of a French style balayage, which is just a single paint stroke. Okay.
هلا القصه اللي عملناها عاده احنا عملنا بلياج بنحط الريش من فوق. هو لا عم ياخذها وما عم ياخذ الفي، عم ياخذ خصله حتى تبين الخصل حول الوجه. شوي قال انه
So different than my 2 points, when I get to the face frame, I really do thinner pieces all around the face. And her hairline is interesting to say the least. So I'm not going to do another one, but on most people I'll do about four. And when you guys get into your hands-on portion, I'll come around and I can help you with this part. But what I'll do after is I'll take a fine-tooth comb and comb it lightly around the face.
بيخلص صديقك مش يضبط الاسنان تبعته ناعمه كثير.
Can everybody see that?
ورواق مش.
So it's going to give a nice light brightness. Then I'll come back once I have that. Make sure my brush is clean. And those first lines that I put into the hair, I'll go over them. And what that's going to do is it's going to kind of give you a nice hue all around the face. But then you'll get those pronounced lines. But you see how that it's going to be light everywhere. But I make sure that at every single point. Can everybody see that?
واضح؟
So it's going to be a beautiful light glow around their face, like a glow up. But you still have those really nice pronounced highlights around the face. Everybody see that? And that's really how I do my face frames. Because then you have all those nice pieces, and we know the face frame is the most important part. Sometimes, if you want, I talk about what balayage in that slide.